Lots to talk about in the Game Week 28 preview this week. Lots of players getting injured or suspended, plus some blank games to contend with in Game Week 29. Let's get straight into it. Welcome back to the Draft FC podcast, the podcast website and YouTube channel dedicated to all things official draft FPL. My name is Mitch and I'm your host for another Game Week preview, going over waiver options, hidden gems and general Premier League chat ahead of Game Week 28. So as I said in the intro, Game Week 29 has a few blanks for four teams: Liverpool, Aston Villa, Newcastle and Crystal Palace. So pretty meaty teams when it comes to FPL and draft FPL in particular. So you'll be hard pushed to find a team not affected by those blanks. And I dare say there could be quite a few teams out there who are really going to struggle to field half an 11 next week. These blanks obviously provide some interesting dilemmas. You know, your big names are fine. You're not going to be dropping those. You'll just hold them on the bench next week. But for, you know, some of your lesser names, maybe some of those Crystal Palace defenders, perhaps one of those Aston Villa wingers, it may not be quite so easy to hold and you may be looking to move them on. And what makes it especially difficult is that all of these teams on the whole have very nice fixtures this weekend. So you then got to work out, do you just hold them, play them this weekend and see who you can get next week, or do you move early? My general advice, if you don't have any obvious drops, don't sweat it too much and just play for the points, play for the wins this week. If you happen to be very well set, you may want to play into that by, you know, avoiding the blankers or going in for teams with good fixtures next week, like Wolves away to who they got, Southampton, Forest away to Ipswich and United away to Leicester. I know that seems like the most oversimplistic fixture analysis targeting the relegation clubs, but you really don't need to overthink it that much. And as I said, if you're fairly well set this week, just have an eye on those ones for next week and get in ahead of the rest. Bournemouth are another team, actually, if you're looking at your, you know, maybe your Dango, Taras, Taverniers, or some of their defenders. Don't be afraid to hold on to them with a trip to Tottenham this weekend. No, they will be very valuable next weekend against Brentford at home. And if it's not too much to ask, even if this is your first time here or maybe your 10th or 100th time here, make sure to give us a thumbs up, click the subscribe button so you don't miss out on any future episodes as they drop. I know it doesn't seem like a lot, but it doesn't cost you anything. It helps get the videos out to more eyes and ears. So yeah, we appreciate if you do that. And another thing to bring up now, one of our Draft FC members scolded me last week in our Discord chat for not selling our membership service nearly enough, which is definitely something that is, it's definitely fair enough. I definitely push the website less and less as the season goes on because I'm generally more worried about the content. But they are absolutely right. So I'll say right now at the top, for those that play Draft FPL and those that play seriously, or simply just those of you that want to support the channel or the podcast a little bit more than you already do by watching, we have a paid up membership service at draftsfc.co.uk. Amongst other things, you will gain entry into the aforementioned Discord server where you'll be able to join lots of fellow draft heads, and everyone in there is a Draft FC member, so has access to all of the data we have behind the scenes. But the site itself also provides live game week scoring with bonus points included. The predicted lineups are fully synced to your league with the availability of who's free and who's not. Waiver planning, league analytics, which can be more fun than useful, but yeah, you get what you want out of them. And the thing that does attract managers late in the season is the global ranking feature, which looks at your draft league as a whole and ranks them against every other similar sized draft league in the world to work out just how competitive your draft league is. A lot of the features are based on our own expected points algorithm, which is almost fully gone through its complete second overhaul by Draft FC Taz. He's just putting the final touches onto that, and we're a lot happier with the results. Another thing that we often speak about at the end of the season, because it's another really useful thing we added a couple of years ago now, is the time capsule feature, which allows you to store all of the data that you can see in the Draft FC dashboards, and you'll be able to refer back to it for many years to come if you've got certain bragging rights you need to hold on to. So there, consider yourselves sold. So I'm recording this episode on Wednesday, the 5th of March, a whole 2 days before the waiver deadline, which makes a change from recent game week. So any team news, injury developments, or press conference info are up to date as of then, and of course subject to change. We've still got some Champions League games going on as I speak, and also a whole round of Thursday night European football tomorrow. So keep an eye on those because there's still plenty of opportunities for injuries. Some of the players I'll be discussing in this episode include Kieran Trippier, Minter, Nketiah, plus a few more. So let's get straight into it. So a reminder first, the waiver deadline will be at the conventional time of 11 a.m. UK time on Friday the 7th of March, ahead of the game week deadline, 24 hours later, 11 a.m. on Saturday morning. Into Waiver Watch, these were the players that were coming in and out of your draft teams ahead of Game Week 27. The players coming in, we had Asensio, Evan Nilsson, Wan-Bissaka, Neto, Enzo, Johnson, Colwill, Gusto and Kilman. I think we mentioned a lot of those in the recent week's pod, so they all sound reasonable. The players making way, Zabani, Dubravka, Veltman, Chalobah, Smith Rowe, Tell, Marino, Nwaneri and Madeki. So, a few interesting drops there, but overall, I think the ins were definitely more positive than the outs. For suspensions and injuries, there's a handful of quite serious ones. So Mateta, I think his one isn't too serious. He got a nasty injury. I'm sure most of you have seen the head injury he suffered against Millwall in the FA Cup the other day. It sounds like a lot of stitches required. So I would imagine they will keep him. He may not, but I imagine they'll keep him away for the upcoming weekend. And as I said, I've got Nketiah slated to start that one, and we'll be talking about him in just a few moments' time. Ake has undergone some sort of surgery for a foot fracture, so not really sure when his return may be. Given how late we're getting into the season now, may not see a lot more of him before the season is over, so definitely a drop if you're hanging on to him. Dorgu got sent off in the Cup for United. He'll be back in Game Week 30. Gordon, unfortunately, got a red card, which will see him return in Game Week 31 and also means he'll be out for Newcastle in the League Cup final, which is a shame for him and for them. The other big one is Hall for Newcastle has sustained a foot injury. I believe he may have undergone surgery too, but his season has been confirmed as done and dusted. So obviously opens the door for replacements, but whether or not you don't fancy the Newcastle defence without Hall, that's entirely up to you, and we'll discuss that in a minute too. And the final one is Matheus Cunha, not his first red card of the season, currently expected to return in Game Week 31, but he has been charged by the FA for the incident, and there is definitely potential there that ban could be extended by another week or two, so we'll have to wait and see. So, into the main picks, let's start with some defenders. And right at the top, an old favourite, Kieran Trippier. Now, I know loads of you are still living in 2022 when it comes to K-Trips, where he was just getting assists and clean sheets for fun. And I know there'll be lots of you that will love the idea of him getting a run in the team. But 0 returns in the Premier League so far. Certainly isn't premium anymore. We obviously know he's not first choice. But with Hall out, the expectation will be Livramento may have to cover a few more left-back minutes, which means the door opens for Kieran Trippier to come back in at right-back. I say he's got 0 returns, 26 FPL points from the number of starts and the minutes he has got isn't too bad. But I say, with the assurance of game time, including the League Cup final, you wonder if he could just have a little purple patch to keep Newcastle ticking over. The only thing to be wary of here is he may be injured himself. We're waiting for news on that, which is absolutely classic. But if he's good to go, quite a good wild card to pull out. Obviously, the only other thing to caveat, as we've already discussed, is that Newcastle do have a blank in Game Week 29. I personally would not be going above and beyond. I wouldn't be going out of my way to pick up Kieran Trippier right away. Away to West Ham isn't the worst fixture, but I think if you combine that with the blank, I'd sooner look elsewhere. But certainly for the bigger leagues, definitely one to have a look at. Next is Richards for Palace, purely a fixture pick. They play Ipswich at home, and he's going to be likely the only one available in your waiver pile if you want a piece of the potential Palace clean sheet. Then we've got a couple of Chelsea players. Ownership went up for both of them considerably last week, and that's Tosin and Gusto. Tosin is much more widely available. His ownership's up to 22%, so he's available in about 3/4 of leagues out there. Gusto's ownership now creeping up over halfway. Again, similar to Richard's, this is purely a fixture pick with a home game against Leicester. It is obviously Maresca's old club. There is a bit of an expected narrative essence here. Leicester will be well up for trying to get one over on their old manager, so do have to bear that in mind. And if there is news that Chalobah is back fit, then Tosin's place in the team is not guaranteed, so one to keep an eye out for on that one, but we should get some clarity on that hopefully by Thursday. And then the final one is Kusanov for Manchester City. They go to Forest this weekend, and mark my words, Forest are slipping now. City have seemingly landed on a combination of players that do have a chance of keeping a clean sheet and winning games. Kusanov is just quietly stepped in and become a nailed centre-back for them. Looks good. City have a cracking fixture run right through to the end now. So, when it comes to City players, especially ones like Kusanov that we know will play the majority of minutes, I like the stock. Into midfield, and Minter for Brighton. He's a player that's been off and on the list over this season. Ownership up to a decent 61% now, so he won't be there for all of you. Good home fixture against Fulham this weekend. If we look at the underlying stats from game week 20 onwards, it's pretty much around the start of 2025. There are only 3 players who have a non-penalty expecting goal involvement per 90 above 1. Wissa is top for Brentford, who, as we know, has been a stats monster this year. Erling Haaland is in second spot, and in at number 3 is Yankuba Minter for Brighton. The lowest expecting goal involvements tally he's put up for a single game in 2025 was last week, where he only put up 0.22. But otherwise, it's been impressively consistent shot and chance creation. The next few games aren't the best. Fulham at home looks okay at a glance, but Fulham are second only behind Arsenal in terms of expected goals against since the turn of this calendar year, allowing less than 1 XG per game. And then Brighton go to the Etihad in game 29. So it's up to you. It may feel like we're sort of, if you picked him up now, you may feel that you're just slightly behind the curve. But if anyone's going to do anything against Fulham, Minter will be up there for sure. Now, we've got Harvey Barnes for Newcastle. We tried fighting the fight for Harvey Barnes before, but Eddie Howe's defences are just too strong. However, even against the might of his will, with Gordon now out for a few weeks, the stage is really set for Harvey Barnes to prove once again that he is one of the pound-for-pound best wingers in the Premier League and in FPL. He's played just under 800 Premier League minutes so far this season, which is just shy of 9 full Premier League games, and has 6 attacking returns in that time, with a non-penalty expecting goal involvement per 90 of 0.59, which is very decent, and for Newcastle puts him second only behind Isak. So this is as good as an opportune waiver pickup you're likely to see all season. Newcastle do have some glorious fixtures left if you can plan around the blank in game 29. So it will put some off, but if you're in good shape for next week, he's a great one to pick up for that game away at West Ham, where we can be fairly certain he'll start, and then you've got him for a bit of a longer run too. Another one we're familiar with discussing in recent episodes is Nkunku for Chelsea, and if we look at our Draft FC squad planner from last week, he actually has a negative roster percentage. If we look at the top 100 leagues, means that the best and finest draft leagues out there lost their patience with Nkunku ahead of the last round of fixtures. Now, I said in, I think it was the Game Week 25 preview, that picking him up had to be with an eye on not just that coming game week, but on the entire period that Nico Jackson would be missing for. So not just a week or two, which was Brighton away, Villa away. We had to have a look forward to the bankers, which were Southampton at home and now Leicester at home. And so halfway through that double, he has 2 attacking returns. Leicester looked defensively awful, maybe not quite so bad as Southampton, though at times they definitely give him a run for their money. And there's no reason he can't bag another 1 or 2 returns this weekend. So if he's floating around in your waiver pile, if someone did drop him last week, I would happily snap him up for this game. But you will need to set your sights predominantly, in this case I will say predominantly just for this game week, because after that the fixtures do take a bit of a turn. The final one to mention is Ismaila Sarr. Now, I actually didn't realise Sarr was going through such a barren patch when it came to attacking returns. He's not a player I own in any of my own draft teams, so maybe took my eye off him a bit. But 2 goals last week and he's still been putting up decent underlying numbers despite being, having a bit of a barren spell. 10 attacking returns for the season now, and Ipswich at home said is as good an opportunity to try and kickstart some end of season form, both for your own team and for Sarr in particular. Those who have the likes of Kudus, Sharda, and Maneri, Dango Utara even. If Sarr was in the pile, I'd happily pick him up for any of those guys. Then finally, on to the forwards, or the forward singular. The only player that is I've currently got slated to start in my predicted lineups, the only striker with less than 50% ownership this weekend is Eddie Nketiah. And that includes even the likes of Onuachu, Ferguson, Beto. All of them ownership in 10-team leagues is well above 50%, and that's really just another symptom of the lack of strikers and the way they're all dropping like flies. Hopefully I don't have to sell Nketiah to you too much. He's performed reasonably well from the opportunities he's got. He's firmly number 2 in the pecking order behind Mateta, and the experiment of playing both of them didn't really seem to work out, but we've got him this weekend, almost certain to start, and a home game against Ipswich. Yeah, another one that you definitely need to pencil in for a waiver, because I highly doubt any of you listening have 3 very good, nailed-on, fit and healthy strikers for the coming weekend. And lots of you, including myself, will have a streaming forward spot with some absolute trash in it. So swap it out for Nketiah. It is a short-term move, but points on the board you can't turn down. Do comment below if there are any players that I haven't mentioned that you're interested in this week. I should definitely have some time, unlike last week, to reply to most of the comments that come in tomorrow, Thursday the 6th. I can't promise any of the last minute ones on Friday morning because I will be at work, but certainly any of the ones coming in tomorrow on Thursday I will respond to. But let's move on to the hidden gems. I haven't got too many of these, but in defence, a couple of Wolves players to consider, Totti and Santiago Bueno, purely just with an eye on that fixture. Everton at home, very low ownership, but I do prefer some of the guys that we mentioned up top if they're available, but these are your backup options. Into midfield, let's stick with Wolves and Jean-Rigna Bellegarde. Ownership just 4%. Say home game against Everton. Started 3 of the last 4 under Pereira now, averaging 5 FPL points per game week in that spell, with a goal, an assist, and 3 bonus points during that time. The minutes have only really come in the last month or so, but his expected goal involvement per 90 for 2025 currently sits just under 0.7, which is phenomenal. It's also interesting because although we've seen him play lots of different roles for Wolves during the last year or two, he's mainly been playing as an out-and-out central midfielder for the last few games, and has basically traded spots with João Gomez, who's been playing as one of those more advanced sort of 8/10s. It seems to be working for them. There are still lots and lots of issues with that Wolves squad, and I've no doubt they'll go through quite a clear out in the summer. But just have a glance at their upcoming fixture schedule and tell me you are not at least a little bit interested. Say the next 4, Everton at home, then Southampton, West Ham and Ipswich. And as I say, Bellegarde's underlying numbers are suggesting that if he were to start and play those 4 games, we would expect a minimum of 2 attacking returns. So yeah, very good one to look at for the larger leagues. The other one I've got on there, not to advocate for, but just to discuss, is Jadon Philogene, who moved from Villa to Ipswich in January. I think definitely one you can't ignore in the big leagues. If you're in a 14, 15, 16 team league, any player really that put up a brace the week before has to be on your radar, because you just can't ignore that kind of form, even though it was just the one game. But for those in conventionally sized leagues, his underlying numbers haven't really impressed me enough to consider at this stage. That's probably why his roster percentage is just a smidge above 0. And then finally, another forward to mention is Obi for Man United. So only because of the continued poor form of Højlund, I think means that we're starting to hear a louder and louder shout for him to be handed a start. I'm not sure he will. It's Arsenal next up. Doesn't seem likely. But if he does get on the pitch, the expected narrative is off the charts. With the teenager will no doubt be very keen to show his former club what he can do and sort of make them regret letting him go. Most hidden gem pick this week was absolutely diabolical. Now, I know I'm normally scraping the barrel for this, but this was really, I was through the bottom of the barrel and scraping the mud underneath. So we're not picking one this week. Stick with who you've got. The only other thing I would mention very, very quickly before we close up is regarding trades. Now, I sort of alluded to it right at the beginning when talking about the blanks in GameWeek 29. But if you are very well set to cover those blanks, if you've got a strong 11 and you only need to bench 1 or 2 players, then consider looking around your league at other managers who are heavily stacked up on those Liverpool, Villa, Newcastle and Palace players, because they'll be in a tough spot, and you could potentially leverage that by picking up one of those players to hold on the bench as part of a trade deal. Just remember, Liverpool and Villa have already played their extra game, so their blank truly is a blank. If you were picking up a Newcastle or a Palace asset, then you still have that double to come later on, which is a whole extra 90 minutes to score you some points. And just to reference that with a real life example, and you can probably imagine where the conversation was going for this trade, but Gordon got traded in our league this week, saying not just the blank, but obviously he's going to be missing for a few games. Cunha also has moved, so all of these players, their value will be right up in the air with a little bit of unknown as to when they will return. And to say, if you're in a position to make the most of that, you may be able to get these players at a very cheeky price. Predicted lineups have been updated. I will do another pass through tomorrow, but they are there and seem fairly happy with them as they are currently looking. Any news that comes out tomorrow, I will update accordingly. So that is it for this episode. Another reminder, the waiver deadline will be on Friday the 7th at 11 a.m. UK time, ahead of the main game week deadline on Saturday. If you do enjoy the content here, do give us a thumbs up and subscribe if you haven't done already. If you're listening on one of the audio platforms, make sure you're following on there too, so you don't miss out on any future podcasts as they drop. Do check out draftfc.co.uk if you haven't done already. See if there is anything of interest. And to say, above all else, it will also get you access to our exclusive Discord server full of draft FPL experts. And I'm not putting myself in there. We've truly got a really great community of draft heads in there. And to say, there are days where I barely get a chance to even read the messages, but people are just helping each other out constantly. I know it will drive everyone to better draft success. So yeah, even if that's all you want, then sign up and you'll be able to access that from the member area. So we'll leave things there. Best of luck ahead of Game Week 28. Do have a little look at your team for Game Week 29 and make any moves this week if you need to. Hope you get the players you want in the waivers. Hope you win your matchups and score lots of points. And until next time, stay sure.